Hey there, it's Syracuse Sports coming back at you. My name is Brent Axe. It's amazing to have you on board here, and we hope that you have done the amazing thing of subscribing to this podcast, of following this podcast, if it's Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. So when a new episode of Syracuse Sports pops up, there it'll be ready for you on demand when you want to listen, when you want to watch. And we've got some good stuff coming for you here on Syracuse Sports. So we hope that you can do that. Don't forget about our Syracuse football post-game shows live after every Syracuse football matchup. We'll be on again Saturday afternoon after the Orange take on UConn in their home opener. And this is an intriguing game, my friends. Remember last year, UConn only lost by a touchdown. It's a weird game, right? They took away a couple of touchdowns, that weird Trevor Pena on the sideline penalty. Remember that one? And Syracuse won by a touchdown, but the Huskies just seem to be getting closer. Syracuse is only a 7.5-point favorite in this game, depending on which, for entertainment purposes only, site you purvey. And the Huskies got a shot in this one. So I wanted to bring in the guy I think of when I think of UConn first. It's not Gino Auriemma. It's not Jim Calhoun. We love Stewie, Brianna Stewart, Syracuse native. But when I think UConn, I think of Jody Ambrosia. Was the longtime play-by-play voice of UConn, still around the program, doing a lot of great things, knows Connecticut sports inside and out. So I wanted to bring Jody on the pod today to get the skinny on this UConn team, and we're going to take it beyond this matchup. Can UConn join the ACC? Can Syracuse and UConn get back on the basketball court at some point? And some broader Syracuse-UConn related issues. But we'll certainly dig into this matchup and what this Husky squad is all about, coming off a great season last year. 9-4, beat North Carolina in the Fenway Bowl, and it's going to give Syracuse, I think, a heck of a challenge on Saturday at the Dome. So we are looking forward to that, and we're looking forward to hearing from our Syracuse Sports Insiders as always. Being a Syracuse Sports Insider gives you direct text message access to me anytime for your thoughts, your opinions, your questions, your comments on all matters of Syracuse sports, and your comments highlighted exclusively on our Syracuse football postgame show. I just wanted to read a couple of comments from some things bouncing around the Syracuse football universe right now. Kenny G says, it's interesting to me looking at its stats from the Tennessee game. Syracuse played them score-wise even after the first quarter. Quarterbacks had equal stats as well as the running backs. 2 plays made the difference. Fumble for a touchdown and a 73-yard score. But they did happen. You can't win many games giving up 45 points. I think this next game will show if Syracuse can have a successful season. They need to play better defense. Yeah, tackling, as we talked about on the post-game show, a major issue, and they've got to show major improvement in that category against UConn. From Matty G, who says, hi, Brent. Something that has been on my mind since Saturday and might have already been mentioned is special teams. Tennessee seems like a school that could have really exploited that, but Trip Woody didn't miss. Jack Stonehouse averaged 49 yards per punt, and Syracuse only allowed 2 punt return yards. I feel like people only comment on special teams when it struggles. They deserve some props. Well said, Matty G, because, yeah, we only tend to look at certain things when they go wrong, but when they go right, especially after how bad it was a year ago, kudos to Syracuse, especially in an environment like that, in a situation like that. And again, something that has to continue to improve for Syracuse. The Cuse End Zone, my guy, says it's crazy that Syracuse football has a must-win in week 2, but this is a must-win game. Wow. Well, considering how tough the schedule is, you got to grab those wins at home, and you got to grab the wins that you seemingly can get. But as we all know, guys and gals, we talk ourselves in an entire offseason into football going by a certain script. These are the games they should win. These are the games they should lose. And it never follows that script. And you can't have UConn come in and throw a monkey wrench in the spokes early in the year. But this is going to be an intriguing game, to say the least, at the JMA Wireless Dome. We'll talk to Jody about that coming up here. But just a reminder that we love to feature your original music here on Syracuse Sports. Got a lot of great feedback on our last artist, Silver Set, and their amazing music that they're putting out. And we can do the same thing for you. Highlight your original music. Are you in a band and want to highlight that band on this show? Would love to play a track for your band on the pod here. If you're a solo artist, if you know some great music artists and they deserve a little bit more of a shine, we would love to do that for you here on Syracuse Sports. We've featured this band before. They're a local band here from Central New York. They've got a new song out called Broken Up. It's a band called Overtired, rock mix, dare I say, They kind of border on heavy metal a little bit too, but they are fantastic. This is their new song. We're going to play a portion of it here, and then we'll play the entire song at the end of the podcast to get all the info on where you can download Overtired's music. Check it out in the show notes. That's also where you can contact me to have your original music highlighted here on Syracuse Sports. So let's listen to a little bit of Broken Up by Overtired, and then we're going to listen to my guy Jody tell us all about the UConn Huskies.
Deleted your number, but it still lives in my head. I'll always remember that time you wished I was dead. Never forgiven something you seem to forget, since you've never listened to a word that I've said. Lately we've been out of touch. I can't take it. It's been feeling broken up. Can you face it?
Joe, it is amazing to see you. When I think of UConn sports, you are not Gino Auriemma, not Jim Calhoun, not Dan Hurley. Go through them all. Go through them all. You're the guy I think of. You're the guy I think of.
You've got it in the right order. It's good to see you, my friend. Good to see you. You doing so well and kicking butt in the podcast world. That's great.
I appreciate you saying that, man. Love the podcast digital space. This is where the kids are, Joe. So I'm just
no
trying to do what
question.
they're doing. You know what I mean?
No question.
So let me start with this. Central Connecticut State, 59-13. You always kind of have to wade through that and say how much of that was UConn and how much of that was an FCS opponent. So I pose that question to you, my friend. What are your takeaways from that game?
I think a little of both.
Mhm.
When UConn was going bad for a few years, these FCS games weren't a walk in the park all the time. Central's going to be a good team in the FCS. They could win the NEC again and go back to the FCS playoffs. But size-wise, speed-wise, talent-wise, it's what an FBS school should do to an FCS school. They should beat them up and send them home with their big paycheck. And that's what, UConn did.
It feels like there's some familiar names to start on the offensive side of the ball, Joe. Guys we saw come in the Dome last year that will be returning this year. And it all starts with the quarterback, with Joe Fagnano and as a senior. Just what are the progressions he's made as a quarterback, and what's Syracuse's defense going to be dealing with in him?
Well, first off, he's in his 7th year, so he's one of the few college athletes collecting a pension.
Well, Syracuse could top that. They got an 8th-year guy,
yes,
David Reese
exactly.
on defense. So there you go.
But you know what? That's going to end, I think, after this year.
I
pretty
agree,
much,
yeah.
because there's no more COVID year and none of this. And he is the quarterback, Brent. Last year they had brought this kid Nick Evers in and had paid a pretty penny for him, and he just wasn't good. They found out why he couldn't play it, why he didn't play at Wisconsin, was because he wasn't good enough. He got hurt. Fagnano stepped in. He had been the quarterback at Maine. He had come to UConn with his old head coach, who was the offensive coordinator and is now gone. And Fagnano has played well. I mean, he's clearly the reason that UConn had the year they had last year and went to a bowl game for the first time in forever. He can throw the ball. He's confident. He doesn't make mistakes. He seems to get better every game. He can see the whole field. I think he's a perfect quarterback for the system that they're trying to run, which is a little more dependent on the run than a lot of college football teams are nowadays. Everybody wants to chuck and duck. Gordon Samus, the offensive coordinator, is also the offensive line coach, and those guys like to run the football.
Interesting.
So,
yeah.
But Fagnano is good. You might see the other kid for a series or two if they want to change the tempo or change the pace, or if things aren't going well under the dome. But it's Fagnano's team, and he's a good fit for what Jim Mora wants to do.
So on that running game note, you get Cam Edwards back, who's a familiar face, but What should we look for there? And that's interesting to hear. You got an offensive line coach as the coordinator. They want to grind it out like that. It's only
Yeah.
one game, but Syracuse did not tackle well last week. They're switching guys to defense. They just this week, Jamie Tremble, who was their highest rated recruit in 2024 as a tight end, he's now playing linebacker. So I think Fran Brown's still trying to construct his defense. Kind of, they're building the plan as they're trying to fly it here. So is UConn going to try and ram it down Syracuse's throat? We'll talk about Skylar Bell in a minute, who's a talented receiver as well. But what's kind of the tenor of that running game?
I think that's exactly, in a perfect world, what they'd like to do on Saturday. I mean, Edwards is the inside guy. He came to UConn. He wasn't a running back when he came to UConn. He was a linebacker. He was an in-state kid who had gone elsewhere. They brought him in. They moved him running back, and he's been great. Mel Brown is kind of the flash and dash guy. He's the speed guy. He can take it the distance at any time. He's dangerous on kickoff returns. And they've got a kid from Connecticut, Victor Rosa, who as a freshman played a lot, played really well. His claim to fame coming in was he was Donovan Klingen's teammate in high school in Bristol at Bristol Central. Rosa got banged up. He's like the third or fourth running back now, but he'll come in passing situations. He's a good receiver out of the backfield. The offensive line is kind of rebuilt. There's a Syracuse transfer, Wes Ho, in the middle. One thing that they've been able to do here is develop offensive linemen. They've had an old lineman picked, I think, don't quote me on this, in the last 3 NFL drafts, and they've stuck. They weren't there to be the guys who are going to be working at 7-Eleven, right, on opening day. They've got a kid from Notre Dame at right tackle who's a big kid. Again, and this, Brent. It's. I think this is more so in UConn's sphere than in Syracuse's. You get a lot of guys from Power 4 conferences, and everybody goes, "Oh, we got a Power 4 guy." Well, the reason you're getting a Power 4 guy is he couldn't play at the Power 4 level 99 times out of 100. It's not. They're not coming here for the NIL money, although there is plenty of NIL money to be spent around. They're not coming in for the guaranteed paycheck. They're coming in because they want to play. And I think linemen come here because they think they have a chance to get drafted. So the offensive line is a little rebuilt, but and they've got a very good tight end room. They've got a couple of kids at tight end who were really good. So I think what we'll see is a good dose of running. But as you mentioned, with Skylar Bell, if Fagnano gets time, that's a pretty dangerous target, and that's somebody who Syracuse really has to be focused on if they want to take UConn's passing game down.
Yeah, Syracuse has a reconstructed secondary. They got a 17-year-old kid at Demetrius Samuel Jr. at corner, and Chris Peel, who's a transfer from Georgia. Of course, Fran Brown was there before, so they're kind of getting their feet on the ground. Bell had a great game against Syracuse last year, had a great game this past week against Central Connecticut State. And speaking of NIL money, he's got an interesting story, Joe. He had some feelers out there, wasn't it? Michigan?
Well, Michigan. Yeah. Michigan was willing to give him a lot of money. But when he heard Fagnano was coming back, that really, and I'm sure UConn sweetened the pot for him too. Let's be honest, in this semi-professional world that we live in now in college athletics. But when he heard Fagnano was coming back, he really wanted to come back and run it back with him again. He's great. He's been a godsend. And I think the thing, Brent, for a program like UConn is if other kids see kids like Skylar Bell coming here, then they'll think, hey, it's not that bad. I mean, he's kind of been a good example. I mean, they have 30 transfers on this year's team. It's not like Belichick bringing in 70 new players at North Carolina. We saw how that worked on
That's
Monday
still a lot.
night.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, 30 transfers and 26 freshmen. That's a lot of new people in your program. And I think it's kind of good that they had a chance to play a team like Central Connecticut before dipping their toe in the Power 4 waters with Syracuse. They play 3 teams from the ACC. They play Syracuse, BC on the road, and they've got Duke at home in November. And those are the biggest games on their schedule.
You rang a couple bells big picture-wise I want to circle back to, Joe, but while we're grinding at X's and O's style here, let's flip on the defense. And Not a lot of returning starters there. You just said it. A lot of transfers generally on this team. What's kind of the tenor of the defense? I was mentioning Syracuse. They're shuffling guys around. They're trying to find their identity there. They do have a couple returning players here, but for the most part, they're trying to find themselves on defense. Is that how you describe UConn, or how would you describe it?
To a T. To a T, Brent. It's a work in progress. People who are closer to the program than I am now tell me there's concern about the defense. Even though Syracuse, as you said, is changing things around, UConn knows it's going to be a stiff challenge. They only bring 2 starters back from last year, one at linebacker, one at defensive back. And while they certainly weren't gashed by CCSU on Saturday, I think they saw enough to make you think this is going to take some time for this to come around. They play a 3-3-5. The defensive coordinator is very aggressive. They're going to try to get after you. They've been strong the last couple of years on the D line. Everybody's gone from the D line, so it's a whole new look. I think, I don't know if the game is going to be a shootout, Brent, but I think there could be a lot of points on the board.
Big picture wise, Joe, this is an intriguing team. You mentioned Carolina. They had to restructure. UConn beat them in the Fenway Bowl last year. This UConn
in
team
a game
won.
where the only people who ever want to be less at Fenway Park are Yankee fans.
With his Yankee shirt on, we should mention, for those of you that are listening and not watching.
North Carolina
on
wanted to be anywhere else on planet Earth last year than 11 o'clock Saturday morning on Lansdowne Street.
11 a.m. on Lansdowne. I mean, there's some hardcores out there at 11 a.m. Don't get me wrong, but I don't. Yeah. That's not in December, by the way. Which
yes, exactly. But you know what? It was an unseasonably warm day.
Oh,
so
okay.
People caught a break.
There you go. So they made that bowl game. They won 9 games. They're an interesting situation. They're an independent in football, and we've seen Cal, Stanford, SMU come into the ACC, and I'm looking there like I get basketball factors heavy into this discussion, but I'm like, UConn's sitting right there. Like you mentioned the NIL money. So just kind of give me like the broad, big picture of UConn football, where they're at and how they're navigating this crazy world we're in.
Well, I mean, look, let's be honest. As great as UConn basketball has been, it's all about football in the world of college, in the world of conferences now. And UConn wanted to get in when Syracuse and Pittsburgh got in after the 2012 season, but BC's athletic director at the time, Gene DeFilippo, was still annoyed at UConn after they were sued for leaving the Big East in 2005, and he basically politicked UConn out at the time. So then UConn had to go wandering in the wilderness in the American Athletic Conference, which was a totally miserable experience, football-wise, basketball-wise. The women never lost a game in the AAC when they were in it in conference play. I think there's been this dalliance with the Big 12 in recent years. The Big 12 made it sound like they were interested in UConn, and then it was like the old cartoon trick, or it was like Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, and UConn was Wile E. Coyote and always had the rug pulled out from under them at the last minute. In a perfect world, the ACC would be the ideal place for UConn, not just for the big sports, football, men's basketball, and women's basketball, but I think more importantly for the Olympic sports. Because if you were in the Big 12, your Olympic sports teams are flying all over planet Earth.
Yeah.
For midweek games, and that's not the goal here. I would think at some point UConn might get into the ACC, especially if teams leave. If that Florida State Clemson thing had ever happened, then I think UConn would have jumped. Now look, UConn loves being in the Big East. It was a godsend for them to be let back in, but don't think for a minute they don't have one foot out the door, looking to get into a Power 4 league.
Yeah, you got my the hair on the back of my neck tingling there when you say Big East and Syracuse and UConn, and thinking back to those days, and everybody pines for that, but we know the world we're in now. But there's got to be a world to switch to basketball for a little bit here, Joe, where Syracuse and UConn can cross paths more. And I get the success that UConn has had under Dan Hurley, and they can be very selective about who they play in non-conference. But I've always had this dream of like can we do? They do all these tournaments now, right? Syracuse is going to play in Vegas for 3 days this year. There's always one or two of these preseason tournaments. Can we just have like a Big East reunion tournament in
Well, I
Madison
think that would
Square
be
Garden, right? In
Yeah.
November or something, right?
Or even
Get the
like
old
at the
band
bar-
back together, round robin a
E-
little bit. Why not?
Even at the Barclays Center or something. You don't have to.
Yeah, they play
you
at the Barclays too much. That's why I said the Garden.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I mean, the other school, like UConn doesn't play Syracuse, UConn doesn't play Pitt. And we know what great rivalries that was from '02 to '04
yeah.
in the Big East. And UConn's playing BC in an exhibition game this year, which I find extremely humorous. UConn's basketball 2 exhibition games are Boston College and Michigan State.
How about
That's
that?
pretty good. There's some schools, big schools, that don't play good non-conference opponents like that. I agree. I think UConn and Syracuse should meet. Should have sign a 4-year deal, and none of this crap about playing at neutral sites. The Dome, I forget what the name of it is now.
JMA Wireless Dome. Yep.
Yeah, JMA Wireless Dome, and what used to be the XL Center, which is now People's Bank Arena in Hartford. I wouldn't say play a gamble just because that's not fair to Syracuse because their building seats 25,000 people.
Right.
I totally agree. I wish the schools would get back together. I don't understand why they don't. Although from the UConn perspective, Brent, I would think you look at their non-conference schedule this year. They're going to Boston to play BYU because of the BYU freshman from the Boston area, AJ Alphabet. They're playing Illinois on Black Friday at Madison Square Garden. They're going to Kansas again. They have a really good non-conference. They're not going to Maui. They will never go to Maui again under Dan Hurley. Perhaps the only man who didn't like Maui
Exactly.
in the history of human beings, but that's understandable. I totally agree, Brent. I think UConn and Syracuse should play. Start it off with a home and home and see how it goes from there.
I'm totally with you. And hopefully the powers that be come around on that. News is breaking, which is rare in the pod world, Joe. But as we record this morning, story interesting out there. Ian O'Connor wrote a book with Dan Hurley. And Hurley mentioned he contemplated stepping away. He had early discussions with Fox about becoming a commentator, which is just, that's the path everybody goes down now. Jim Boeheim did it, and so many people are like, yeah, there's a TV job for me somewhere in this world. But what do you think about that? I mean, there's a lot of pressure, of course, on Hurley and in the pursuit of 3 straight championships and the high-level position that he's created. And, Joe, I think by far he is the face of college basketball coaches these days. And in an era you and I remember, of course, when Boeheim and Krzyzewski and Lou Carnesecca and go through all the names, John Thompson, Calhoun, of course, that were these pop-out names that were the stars of the sport. That's dissipating before our very eyes here, but Hurley is the star of the sport in the coaching.
Yeah, no question. I saw that too just before we got together here, Brent. He works. Danny. It takes it all seriously, as they all do. But I think he puts even more pressure on himself. And they were disappointed that they got beat in the second round. Now look, I really like Hurley. But I thought the talk last year in the preseason about a three-peat put too much pressure on the kids.
Yeah.
It was not the same team that had won the previous 2 years. So to put that pressure on those kids, I think it haunted them all year long. But I could see where there would be a part of him that would say, I can't do it anymore. I'm a mess. I'd rather have a more stable lifestyle. Now, there's also a train of thought that says a couple of years down the road, when the Knicks get tired of Mike Brown, that the Knicks would be the perfect spot for Danny to land. New Jersey
that
guy.
Sounds ideal. Yeah.
So, but I don't doubt that he might have had those feelings when last season ended.
What's the early look on UConn basketball this year, both the men's and women's?
Well, the women's should win the national championship again. And the men should be a top 5 contender. Alex Caravan came back. He struggled from time to time last year. He's not an NBA player, but he's as solid a college basketball player as you could find. They brought in a real good recruiting class. They brought in transfer from Georgia to take the role that Stefan Castle had. They brought in a transfer from Dayton to help run the point. So a couple of really top-notch freshmen. I think the kid Terrace Reed, the big kid, the Michigan transfer who played pretty well last year, is going to be really good. What's gonna make things work for UConn is if some of the returning kids, Jalen Stewart, Jaden Ross, can pick up their game. Solo Ball can shoot. He's a really good player. The Big East isn't great. I think it'll be UConn and St. John's again. Creighton will always be good. Marquette, I think, are frauds. We see that every year in the tournament. So I think UConn. I don't think a Final Four is out of UConn's purview for the year. And then you get to the Final Four, and a lot of times it's a crapshoot.
Well, I know we're pining for the days of Syracuse UConn hoops, but they're playing in football. I think this is going to be an intriguing game on Saturday. The point spread gets a little smaller every year. Syracuse is just about a touchdown favorite in this one. It was an intriguing game last year, and I think we're going to see a really intriguing game on Saturday. And Joe, we appreciate your time.
It'll be a good. It'll be a good clash of styles, Brent. I really do. I think UConn's going to try to ground and pound and go up top to Bell, and Syracuse obviously still a work in progress. Hopefully they don't fake all those injuries like they did. No, I'm just kidding. I heard about that.
Demetrius Samuel Jr. Not going to get the Oscar for that one. We'll just say that. So let's not. They're supposed to be calling that in college football these days too.
Right,
you didn't have a better
exactly.
example of this is what you should call. Frankly, Syracuse did it. Tennessee did it. It's like, okay, everybody play football and let's stop faking the injuries.
Let's stop the BS.
Joe, thank you so much, man. It's awesome to see you.
Anytime for you, my friend.
And we will do it again soon. Hopefully when Syracuse and UConn renew that basketball series.
Hopefully we're still alive when that happens.
Thanks to Jody for his terrific insight. As always, love talking UConn with Joe. You may remember him from his days on ESPN Radio as well. Great to see and hear his voice on the pod here today. So just a reminder, friends, that as soon as Syracuse UConn is over, keep it in mind that we will be bringing you our Syracuse football postgame show Saturday afternoon. I will go down to Syracuse football postgame, see what's cooking after that game, and then we'll hop on the pod. I will send a text to our Syracuse Sports Insiders to let them know exactly when we're going on the air. Just another great benefit of being a Syracuse Sports Insider, where you get direct text message access to me anytime. We only highlight our texters on the postgame show. We don't take comments from social media or anywhere else. So I'll be hearing from you guys during the game, I'm sure, and we'll be highlighting some of your comments here on the Syracuse UConn postgame show and throughout the Syracuse football season. Got another pod coming for you scheduled on Friday. I don't want to give anything away here. We always like to make sure we get these things in the can before we promote them, but looking like we're going to have a former Syracuse football player on he's been a guest on the pod before, and he's got some always entertaining and insightful thoughts on Syracuse football, and we're going to have another UConn guest scheduled to join us as well. Got some good guests lined up for next week as well. We're humming, man. We're into it. We're back. It's football season, and we're going to keep it rolling here on the Syracuse Sports Podcast. So again, please subscribe, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. You guys are busy. You got lives. You got things going on. We want you to watch and listen when you can on your time, and that's the beauty of subscribing to the pod. So please make sure you do that wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, whatever you prefer. Thanks to Joe D for joining us. Thanks to our Syracuse Sports Insiders as always, and thanks to Overtired for their terrific song Broken Up. We're going to play that for you in its entirety here to end the podcast. And remember, we can do the same for your band. If you're an original music artist, hey, send it to me. All the info is in the show notes on how you can get in touch so we can highlight your original music here on Syracuse Sports. Thanks for listening. My name is Brent Axe. We will talk to you next time, guys.
Deleted your number, but it still lives in my head. I'll always remember that time you wished
jump this summer. Maybe you got broken up with. Consider the Broken Up Hotline. And you, my friend, will get a little something for your heartache.
Lately